Good afternoon. It's Saturday, the 1st of August. I'm Erin Viner. This is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Palestinian calls to avenge the murder of an 18-month-old baby, Ali Saad Dawabshe, are increasing the volatile situation in the West Bank in the aftermath of the arson attack in the village of Duma early yesterday morning in what investigators believe was a price tag operation by suspected Jewish extremists. The surviving family members remain hospitalized, where the baby's 32-year-old father, Saad, is in life-threatening critical condition, while his 4-year-old brother, Ahmed, is being treated for severe burns. His 27-year-old mother, Riham's condition was described by relatives as worsening overnight. Clashes erupted between security forces and enraged Palestinians across the West Bank after Hamas called for a day of rage in response to the attack. 14-year-old Palestinian Laith al-Kheldi succumbed to his wounds earlier today after being shot in the chest near the Atara checkpoint last night. The IDF said that he was shot by the soldier's gunfire after he hurled a Molotov cocktail at an army post in Berzait. In other violence, 17-year-old Mohammed Masri was also killed by troops after refusing orders to halt his approach of the Gaza border fence near Beit Lahia last night. He was accompanied by another Palestinian who was injured after both ignored calls to stop as well as prior warning shots into the air. The arson attack is being harshly condemned by Israeli MKs and ministers across the political spectrum. Zionist Union leader Isaac Herzog today called for the prosecution of Jewish terrorists with exactly the same means and same punishment as that of Islamist terrorists, including administrative detention and the destruction of their homes. He went on to say that this is a time that real action should be taken against Jewish terrorists, whom he said pose just as much of a threat to the security of the state as their Muslim counterparts. Before the start of the Sabbath last night, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited 4-year-old Ahmed Dawabshe at Tel HaShomer Sheba Medical Center. He vowed that the authorities will apprehend the perpetrators of the attack and appealed to Israelis and Palestinians alike to fight against extremism.
I spoke to President Abu Mazen right before I entered the hospital. I told him of this visit and of Israel's absolute commitment to fight this evil, to find the perpetrators, bring them to justice. We have to calm the spirits and recommit ourselves to our joint battle against terrorism and extremism. It's something that all parts of the Israeli government and all parts of Israeli society agree on. It's important that we make common cause with our Palestinian neighbors to give ourselves a better future, a future free of violence, free of terror, and a future of peace.
Condemnation of the terror attack against the Palestinian family has been pouring in from around the world, including the United Nations Security Council and the United States.
Continued failures to effectively address impunity for repeated acts of settler violence have led to another horrific incident involving the death of an innocent life. This must end. The absence of a political process and Israel's illegal settlement policy, as well as the harsh and unnecessary practice of demolishing Palestinian houses, have given rise to violent extremisms on both sides. This presents a further threat to the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people and to the security of the people of Israel. The Secretary General urges both sides to take bold steps to return to the path of peace. The Secretary General reiterates his call on all parties to ensure that tensions do not escalate further, leading to more loss of life.
The United States welcomes Prime Minister Netanyahu's order to Israeli security forces to use all means at their disposal to apprehend the murderers for what he called an act of terrorism and bring them to justice. We urge all sides to maintain calm and avoid escalating tensions in the wake of this tragic terrorist incident.
Now turning to the stabbing attack at the Gay Pride Parade in Jerusalem on Thursday evening that left 6 people injured, including a 17-year-old girl who continues to fight for her life today in critical condition. A number of rallies will be held tonight in protest of the hate crime. President Reuven Rivlin is expected to attend the one in the capital, while his predecessor, Shimon Peres, is set to address those gathered in Tel Aviv. A number of high-profile heads of political parties and Knesset members have also announced their plans to participate in the rallies. The ultra-Orthodox assailant of the Jerusalem attack, Yishai Shlisel, is reportedly refusing counsel and has been found fit to stand trial. A memorial service had already been scheduled to be held in Tel Aviv tonight for 27-year-old Nir Katz and 16-year-old Liz Trubeshi, who were shot and killed at the Bar Noar Gate Youth Center in the city 6 years ago. The event is now slated to include demonstrations of solidarity with the victims of the attack that targeted the LGBT community in Jerusalem. Moving to the Iranian nuclear deal, which was signed after 12 years of negotiations. The director of the Arms Control Unit at Tel Aviv University's Institute for National Security Studies, Dr. Emily Landau, discussed the accord with IBA's Efrat Batat, saying that she believes that the outcome is due to mistakes that were made right at the start.
The fact that it's only the U.S. Congress that is taking a serious approach to this deal, looking at all the ins and outs, exposing the dangerous holes, loopholes, and weaknesses and flaws in this deal is quite amazing. So even if this congressional review doesn't lead to a rejection of the deal, I agree with you, it's probably a done deal. I think this process is tremendously important for exposing what happened over the past year and a half of negotiations and how criticism was brushed aside and marginalized, how the criticism was not taken into account by the negotiators, how they created this catch-22 situation where there's actually no time for serious and meaningful review, and exposing the flaws so that at least, perhaps, there will be a platform for pressuring the P5+1 at some level or the United States to at least adopt stricter measures for dealing with anti-Iranian violations. That's probably the most we can get at this point.
Negotiations have been going on for over a decade. What, in your view, was the turning point? What was the game changer?
2012, harsh sanctions, biting sanctions. Iran came to the table looking for a deal. Only the deal that they were looking for was called sanctions relief and minimal nuclear concessions. That was their game plan. And the P5+1, rather than using their leverage to pressure Iran to make the concessions that Iran needed to make in order to get a good deal, the P5+1 started projecting that, and especially the United States was projecting that they were more eager for the deal than Iran, and they started making concessions. They also communicated to Iran that this was not going to be resolved any other way, right? We understood that it was only going to be through a negotiated deal. Well, the minute you say that to the other side, you actually give them a lot of leverage and you weaken your own leverage. And therefore, we saw the string of concessions that finally led to something that Iran could say yes to, because Iran knows that with this deal, they still maintain their breakout capability. They have the sunset provision. They know that in 10 to 15 years, in any case, whatever restrictions were put on them will sunset, and they will have a vast nuclear infrastructure which they can use to continue doing the things that they were doing before the deal.
Is there anything, though, and despite what you're saying, it's a bad deal, that's your opinion, is there anything that is good about this deal?
People are highlighting the fact that the inspections on the known nuclear facilities are much more intrusive than they used to be, and that is true. The question is, does that actually make us feel safer? The test of the inspection regime is not on the easy parts. Remember, the known nuclear facilities were also inspected under the terms of the NPT. So yes, they've become more intrusive, but that's not where the problem was. The problem was with the activities that Iran was conducting as far as the weaponization aspects of its program at the secret facilities, the military facilities, especially Parchin, where Iran was not granting them access. And we can see through this deal that was achieved, there are big holes with regard to verification in that, and specifically in that respect. So yes, in the less important areas, there's more inspections. In the areas where we actually need the inspections, where we didn't have the inspections, we still don't have them. Or let's say there's a lot of ambiguity about whether the international community, the IAEA, will be able to, at the end of the day, enter the military facilities where there are suspicions of Iran working on a nuclear weapon. So the fact that some things were achieved through this deal has to be measured against the areas that remain untended to, let's say, or untended to in a manner that gives us a sense that we can rely on this deal to stop Iran from moving to a nuclear weapons capability. And in that respect, you know, we cannot be complacent.
Israel is paying a high price because of the Prime Minister's rejection of the Iranian nuclear pact, according to the former deputy head of Israel's National Security Council, Chuck Freilich, who told IBA's Efrat Batat that the premier's policy is threatening to further isolate the Jewish state.
The American-Israeli relationship is a very, very, very deeply embedded one in a whole variety of ways. No one crisis as deep as this one is will cause a major long-term impact for the worse. Will it have repercussions? Well, at a bare minimum for the next 18 months while Mr. Obama is president. I think it will have long-term repercussions in terms of the fact that both sides now know that Israel, when it's to its benefit, is willing to play a partisan game. At the moment in favor of the Republicans. But if you do it once, you can do it with the other side in the future. So that even the Republicans who are enjoying the Democrats' discomfort at the moment know in the back of their minds this can boomerang against them in the future. One of the great strengths of the American-Israeli relationship is that it was always a bipartisan one. And we have now changed that in a most egregious manner. Another thing is there's a limit to how long you can say no. Israel has withstood the American position on the peace process issues for decades. That was considered an exception. People understood that this was an ideological issue for much of Israel. The Iranian issue isn't an ideological one. It's only a strategic one. How can Israel now be coming out against the United States? We've got one real friend in the world. We're now alienating that friend.
Taking on the big kid on the block, huh?
We're taking on the big kid on the block, and we're going to lose. And I mean, the really amazing thing here is why the Prime Minister believes that he should fight a losing battle. The Israeli public doesn't understand this because it's being misrepresented by the Prime Minister, by ministers, by other officials. We're going to lose. There is no
chance that he's going to defeat Obama in Congress.
It's a great big world out there. No expert, no informed observer that I know of thinks we have the slightest chance of winning this battle in Congress. So why go down fighting? Where is the glorious victory here? We are going to infuriate the President of the United States, already have, and the Democratic Party. We're going to leave the Republicans knowing that we can play against them in the future. We're going to lose. Why do it? What benefit?
So you're saying that this will further isolate Israel in the international arena?
Absolutely. If we don't have enough isolation today, we're now alienating our one great friend. And the whole delegitimization campaign is continuing as we speak. A potential UN Security Council meeting is just waiting for this for the Iran issue to be resolved, another 2 months, let's say. The Palestinians may, or people may be trying to push, the EU may be trying to push a resumption of talks with the Palestinians. We need the President of the United States. Now, this deal will postpone the Iranian capability. It doesn't end Iran's aspirations to go nuclear. We need the United States. We need the United States desperately. Israel has received over $120 billion in American aid. That's a phenomenal figure. Over $120 billion. I'm repeating it because I want viewers to think about that for a minute. No one else, at least since World War II, has ever received aid from the United States anywhere near that. Part of it has to do with our policy. The U.S. doesn't give it to it just out of altruism. Part of it is because there's supposedly shared a mutuality of interests. We're now coming out against the president's #1 foreign policy initiative of his entire 8 years in office. That's not the way junior allies treat the big guy on the block.
Republican presidential contender Mike Huckabee responded to this week's news of the slated release of espionage agent Jonathan Pollard from prison by expressing support, while also voicing concern that U.S. President Barack Obama may try to use the development as a means to lessen Israel's objections to the Iranian nuclear deal.
Well, I'm delighted that Jonathan Pollard is apparently going to be released, and that's good news. He's more than served an adequate amount of time for what he did, and he should have been released, and I've been advocating for it. But I hope that this is not sort of a bald attempt for this president to try to appease and win friends among the Israelis, believing that if he lets Jonathan Pollard go, then the Israelis are sort of bound and determined that they have to support the Iranian deal. These are two separate issues. The president needs to let Jonathan Pollard go because it's the right act of justice. But he also needs, and Congress needs, to reject this Iranian deal because it is not in the best interest of the world.
Jonathan Pollard's first wife, Anne, spoke with journalists this week upon news of her ex-husband's upcoming release from prison. Anne Pollard served 40 months of her own 5-year sentence in prison for involvement in the case. She shared her sense of disappointment with how she and Jonathan were treated by the Israeli government with Israel Television's Michael Doron, as well as her feelings of betrayal by her former husband and her hopes of being recognized as a prisoner of Zion.
You know, it's a very difficult life. You were betrayed by the Israeli government, and you were betrayed by your husband, and still you fight for him.
Of course.
Why?
Because I know how horrible it is to be in jail. Because I know how horrible it is not to have a friend in the world. I would have fought tooth and nail for his release. I would have done anything to have seen him released from prison back in those days. I was there for him. Once I was able to get rid of the FBI agents who were tearing my home apart, we went to a phone booth and called the second handler, who again assured us not to worry, to stall them, that everything would be okay.
And you think that they knew that you were going to be arrested?
Everybody understood crystal clear. Let's face it, Avi and Sella ran to the embassy and got out of there. So
they lied to you and betrayed.
They lied to our face. They told us forever, you know, we're family, and they treated us like a family. I mean, I really thought of these people as family.
Spying is a very dangerous game. Didn't you know about
this? This is so clear. This is
you probably saw some movies, some spying movies.
Yeah, but these are movies. If only I really understood, you know, and if Jonathan really understood what would happen. I would say to you, Prime Minister Netanyahu, so please, at least recognize me. Give me the recognition I deserve, and let me move forward. Help me obtain even grants or loans at the least, so that I can open businesses, for example, and I can show the country all of the capabilities and all of the things that I used to do. I can show them that I'm completely capable of doing and running businesses and doing these things that I've longed to do but never have had the money or the ability to carry out.
Well, if you're thinking about filling up the gas tank of your car, you might want to just wait until after midnight tonight, when the price of 95-octane fuel will go down by 27 agarot to 6.38 shekels per liter. That's a savings of about 15 shekels for filling a 50-liter tank, which comes as a result of the falling price of oil on the world market. The IBA weather team tells us that the Sharon desert heat wave will continue to simmer throughout the country over the next several days, although tomorrow it will become partly cloudy in the east with the possibility of local light rain after noon. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours.